something I've come to realize in life is that everybody, from my observation, is looking for the same thing. It may look different, people go about it in different ways, and it looks different because people are trying to achieve this one thing, or this sense of this being, this presence or being, this state of being, but they go about it all sorts of different ways. And what I'm talking about here is people looking for a sense of fulfillment, a sense of joy, peace in their lives, and we go about it all sorts of different ways. We see it all the time, and particularly nowadays, more so as time goes on, there is such an emphasis on money. That's a big one, you know, having things. And we see this in videos all the time on YouTube where people are saying how to earn millions of dollars, how you can do this too. And look, it's possible. It is possible, absolutely possible. However, and some of you may already know this yourselves, but I've been around a lot of wealth over my life and very wealthy people. Now, there's been happy ones, there's been ones who aren't that happy. The same thing with the poor. I grew up in a very poor area. I've been around a lot of people very poor, happy, not happy. So it's got nothing to do with money. But the thing is, this is not really about money per se, this whole talk, but it's just one aspect. It's a very, very popular idea that once I get this thing, whether it be money or anything else, then I'll feel a certain way. Then I'll feel this way. But the thing is, the only reason we ever do anything is because of how we think it's going to make us feel. You know, if you want a boyfriend, a girlfriend, husband, wife, children, whatever it is, you do it because of how you think it's going to make you feel, okay? Because you want to satisfy something within inside yourself. There's nothing wrong with any of these things at all, okay? The problem is when people put these things as the goal to feeling a certain state. Going back to the money, actually, it reminds me many times I have heard this, being in a news agency where they have the lotto system. And I know people say this somewhat jokingly, I guess, but it's really coming from, I guess, deep within anyway. I have heard a number of times people say, just jokingly to the person at the lotto stand that they may know, probably going regularly, and they say, oh, if I win tonight's lotto, then I'll be happy. That's what they say. So what they're saying is, because their chances of winning are not great, okay? So what they're basically saying is, I'm not going to be happy until I get this money. The thing is, there's plenty of proof that shows that people who win lotto anyway, within 5 years generally blow it, have less money than when beforehand, and still they're not happy. So it was never about that. So what am I trying to get at here? Well then, if it's not all these other things, you know, whether it's this car, new camera, whatever it is, new phone, whatever, it could be anything. It's not, again, there's nothing wrong with these things per se, but it's a problem when we start telling ourselves we need things to feel a certain state, to be fulfilled, to feel a sense of peace, to feel a sense of joy. That's where the problem starts to come in. So what I'm suggesting here is there is another way. And it's not about looking outwardly, it's about looking inward, okay? All great spiritual teachers over time have told us the same thing, different words maybe, but essentially the same thing. You've got to go inside yourself. Now I know from personal experiences to be absolutely true. Many years ago, I studying metaphysics in a sense of, from a metaphysical science, so from a spiritual point of view. And through that, I read a lot of texts, and I went back to the Bible. I hadn't read that for a long time. Well, I haven't fully read every single word, but I've read it, you know, lots of different bits of it over time. And there's a lot to say about that in itself. I'm not going to try and get too deep in that right now. That's probably for another video. However, I was very interested. I thought, okay, let's see what Jesus was actually saying. Not what the churches are telling us, not what every other Christian or whoever who's just following along the same line of thought is telling us. What was he really communicating with us? And he's communicating a number of things. But the main one, some of you may be aware is already, he told us daily, seek first the kingdom of heaven. Okay, first thing. So where is the kingdom of heaven? And everybody's looking again outwardly. Oh, it's over here. It's unbelievable. I hear this from Christians all the time, you know, looking outwardly again. What did Jesus tell us? He told us The kingdom of heaven is within you. It even, I think it was from the Old Testament, maybe in Joshua, I can't remember, I think it was Joshua, maybe, I can't even remember. But it's not really relevant who said it, but he said, talks about being face to face, with God, and I call this place pineal. That pineal is the pineal gland inside our heads. That is heaven. Okay, so the point is that we focus in on this, and we surrender our personal wills too. This is the other thing that Jesus tells us: surrender your will to God within. Okay, so the reason we're doing this is this is about getting ourselves out of the ego consciousness as much as we possibly can. Jesus achieved this, and he was the way shower, showing it's the same thing. Buddha was the same, and I mean, there are other spiritual teachers. I mean, as I said, everybody's basically telling us the same thing in different words. Now, the point of this is that the ego in our lives, in all our lives, our own personal egos, the egos of others, is the troublemaker in our lives. So we want to raise ourselves above that in consciousness. Okay, so it's really about trying to live in a higher aspect of mind, is what being communicated, what Jesus was communicating here. So that's simple. Basically focus on in here and surrender our personal will to God within. Okay, there's nothing to do with religion, mind you. Nothing to do with religion. Absolutely nothing. You could be non-religious. It doesn't matter. This is a fact. You can find this for yourself. I'm telling you to look inward in yourself. And the thing is too, I know a lot of people say, oh, I meditate and nothing happens and all these sort of things. Well, I'll come to a deeper topic on that at some point. But there are all sorts of techniques. You don't need to get involved in all those necessarily. There are places for them. But just the simple act of silence and sitting and being with yourself. Okay, just close your eyes and try not to fall asleep. Do that throughout the day, and this will really help to allow your higher mind to leak through into the aspects of your conscious mind. The issue is that everybody's constantly bombarding their mind daily with music and nonsense on YouTube and TikTok and everything else. And okay, there's a place you can use these things. There's a place for these things. There's so much to say about that in itself too. But you've got to think about this too. It's a bit like the expression to do with computers. Garbage in, garbage out. If you put in crap data, you're going to get out crap data. Same thing. We're absorbing so much nonsense throughout the day. And not only just absorbing so much nonsense, we're not generally allowing time for peace, to let these things settle, to allow that higher aspect of our mind. This is the point of just sitting and being. Jesus actually did communicate the importance of meditation. I think it was Matthew 6:22. I believe it was this, and he said, and you've got to look at the King James version of the Bibles too. Forget the rest; they've all been translated awfully, and even the King James is not perfect, but it's still got a lot of the mysticism in it. Okay, because I have directly looked at some of these different versions of these books side by side. And it's changing the meaning completely. So anyway, he said, if thine eyes be single, the whole body shall be filled with light. He's talking about the third eye here. And another thing I'll say too, just on this, talking about this aspect of consciousness, is that even St. Paul said, let the mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. So we are all potential Christs. This is what was being communicated. It's what Jesus was telling us. He even said, you can do and will do even greater things than I can do. How? It's not through us. It's not through our conscious, normal human consciousness. It's just, we raise ourselves up and we allow ourselves to be a channel by, we could say partnering up in a sense with the divine within inside ourselves, the God within inside ourselves, to merge as well, to anoint ourselves within, to allow that to happen, to seek that to happen, to let that light live within us, to anoint ourselves from within. Forget about the outside world, look in. I'm only ever going to point you back inside yourself. Don't look at me as I have all the answers. I know this to be true though, through personal experience. Again, I have nothing to do with religion. I'm not a religious person. look, maybe there's a place for it to some degree, and there is. However, it's very misleading, and it misleads people away. Again, Jesus said, the blind will lead the blind, and they'll both fall into a ditch. We see this in churches, we see this in other spiritual communities, but you see it all over the place. Okay, forget about what other people are telling you to do, apart from looking inside yourself. If anyone is trying to get you to do anything outside of that, and saying, I have the answers, don't listen. Look inside. You'll find the answers inside yourself. And the interesting thing about this, though, that I know throws a lot of people, is that people, I sat there, nothing came. It doesn't always happen instantly. There's different ways. So the more we attune our mind and get out of the garbage of this world, with absorbing all the nonsense, and again, allowing time for ourselves, for our own consciousness to speak through us, to come through and give us inspiration, to give us guidance, to give us direction. It happens from within. But if you're crowding up the space, and everybody will sense like a crowd yelling at you from outside all the time, yelling, and then there's one voice, trying to help you, which is the one within, you can't hear it. You can't get any kind of clarity. So what I'm saying today is that this is a very, very important aspect of all of our lives. It's more important than all of this nonsense around us, and particularly in these times now, where there's a lot of heavy stuff going on out there. People are struggling, people are really suffering. And so going back for a moment to when I started to look at what Jesus was saying in the Bible years and years ago, I put it to the test. I did. I thought, I'm going to do what he said. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's been absolutely transformative. I am certainly not the same person from many, many years ago who initially was looking into these things. I was very interested in spirituality and learning more about things, and I could tell you, boy, what a journey it's been. I could say a lot about that. I won't go on a tangent because there's so much to say about that too, about the transformation aspect and other wonderful things that have come from doing this. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everything's all roses. It isn't. But the difference is that the power, the strength comes from within you. The more we attune ourselves to this higher aspect of mind, to the Christ mind, to seek those attributes, the more we are going to feel a sense of fulfillment, peace and joy, no matter what's going on, whether we have things, we don't have things. I can tell you, again, from experience, I've been homeless. I've been living out in forests at times, whatever. I've gone through some pretty hard stuff, right? That's pushed me. And I can tell you, the stuff I've gone through, if people went through 100th of it, would have snapped like a twig. And I'm not saying it because look how great I am. I'm telling you, the reason I was able to get through that was through my connection with this higher aspect within inside myself, this higher mind within inside myself. Doesn't mean I didn't have a few moments where I was, like if you remember the story of Jesus, he even said on the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? Even he had a moment thinking, gee whiz, man, you left me for the dead. I've had feelings like that too, and this, again, that's another topic in itself. This aspect of understanding what faith actually is. It's not a blind faith. It's not. It's an inner knowing. It's an inner peace. You're thinking, well, everything's gone pretty sideways, but somehow I feel quite peaceful about it all. I have this incredible optimism still, and that doesn't come from nowhere. And the more we meditate, the more we seek the presence of God and God's attributes to live through us, and we do that through, we can just do that through meditation, affirming that. I seek, or even start the day. Start the day with, as soon as you wake up, as I do this daily in different ways, that I just affirm that I surrender my personal will to the will of God within me this day, to live through me, to share God's love, God's joy, wisdom, healing, creativity, laughter. You can add any attributes you want there to affirm it, and really do this, with a sense of purpose, with a real sense of, what, I do want to experience this. And if you're someone who says you're a spiritual person, what is the height of spirituality? Thinking and acting like God or Christ, however you want to look at it. So we want to have these attributes come through us. And I'll tell you that I know when I'm not in alignment. I've had moments in life where I've gone off, not totally gone off, but I've moved away a little bit from things, and I've, even at times where I've, got back into smoking weed, for instance. Okay, that, it's fun for a bit, But you build a tolerance, and before you know it, it's taking more from you than it's giving to you. And I'm not saying never ever do it. I personally, I'm pretty much done with it, to be honest. Because it was really robbing me of the joy of life. It was, well, I was, when you're really stoned, for instance, you just sort of sit there and you don't really necessarily do a lot. I mean, sometimes you can, depends on a number of things, but then you eat more food than you want to, sometimes crap food, wake up not feeling as energized, foggy, my mind's foggy, I can't think clearly, it's not sharp, and then I think, what was it for? What was it all for, really? I had a night of having a few smokes and it didn't get much out of it because my tolerance was so high, thinking, that's not wise, that's stupidity. So I realized, well, if I'm saying I want to seek wisdom, well, the wise thing to do was just cut out the dead weight in that sense. So anyway, a little tangent there on that aspect. But coming back to this aspect of this higher aspect of mind, really embrace this in your life, because that truly is, as again written in the Bible, that don't store up treasures for yourself here on earth. Store up the treasures within, and we do that from looking within and seeking to best demonstrate these attributes of God or Christ and these higher aspects, and to seek a virtuous life, a righteous life. These aren't things that we say, oh, look how great I am. It's not that. We need more of this in life. If we want to change this world, it starts with each and every one of us individually. And the way we do that, we don't do it through ego consciousness. Look at what egos do. You said this, she did that, blah, blah. People have punch-ons at the pub on Friday, Saturday nights, getting drunk and stuff like that. That's all ego. That's not higher mind. That's not Christ consciousness. That's not living in a higher aspect of mind. And it happens in many ways. It happens in many ways. We deceive each other, and we only make the world worse when we do this. Another example I often give about this is about, okay, you're going to sell your car. You might know there's a lot of problems with it. You don't tell the person who's going to come to buy it, and it's got some seriously big expensive things. This is the problem. Thinking like this. This is not a way to think. That's ego thinking. What can I get? Stuff the rest. Who cares? It's all about me. We've got too much of that. Right? If you want to help this world, start with yourself. That's it. Start to be more virtuous. Look up a list of virtues and say, okay, well, I can be more honest. I can start to think about that. Because it's dishonest, what I was talking about with the car thing. That's dishonest, really. Why would you want to do that? If you're someone who says you're into spirituality and you're doing these things, you really got to question yourself on that. Seriously. I mean, the ultimate aspect is understanding, if you want to call it the law of one, or we're all connected in some way. However you want to look from a scientific point of view, even it doesn't matter. But if you start acting like this individual, it's all about me and screw the rest. Well, we've got problems, and we can see that everywhere in the world right now. Okay, so if you do want to change the world, and I'll make a big thing on that, start with you. Try to clean up yourself, right, and be an example to others, not by showing them like, look how great I am. Just by example through just changing your behaviour, your actions. You don't even need to, be really sticking into people. There's another topic. I won't I won't get too much on that one either. I've got a lot to say, obviously. The other thing I was going to say a moment ago, throwing on this other little tangent, was there's also a really great line, because I was relating this back to the when I was, getting very into the weed and stuff like that, is that, and mind you, I'm not saying don't do it, it's up to you, you choose what you want to do, but just be mindful of how it affects you. But there's a line in the Bhagavad Gita that says, even the mind that knows the path can stray from the path because the senses are so unruly. But the seer recollects their mind and focuses upon me. I call them a seer, I call them illumined. That is a really beautiful passage in many ways, but it's very real, because it explains that even those who are truly seeking on the spiritual aspect of path to liberate themselves from within, again, we do that from within, all right? We use the power, not of our egos, but this higher aspect of mind to help us do that, and we will heal, and things will happen. There's a lot to say about this. But you can get off track. This is what this line's saying. even there's so many things that can pull us, and that's where we can often see where we've got things we need to heal. Big one can happen is, well, stressful times in life, big time. We can be pulled in one way or the other because we're not coping well. But this is really where we should be seeking more within. Okay, it's I know life's not perfect, and sometimes we don't want to do that for whatever reason, you know. And I've been there many times. I'm like, oh no, I've done it again. I've gotten totally off track. It doesn't mean I've forgotten about God. It just means that I haven't put as much emphasis on that, and I've got myself a bit caught up in things, and you know, matters of the heart too. That's a big one. So we may meet someone romantically and think, oh, they're wonderful, and maybe they are for a bit. So their true colours come out. I'm not saying that's everybody, but that happens. But what can happen is we get pulled away because the senses were so unruly. There was something within us. We were saying, this person has this thing, and I'm so attracted to that, and I just want that. But what can happen, and often does, that blindsides us, and we do get pulled away, and ultimately we can get quite hurt from this experience. However, we're more tapped in to our intuitive aspect, the higher mind within us, well, more chance that our intuition is going to be very clearly screaming some way, you know, abort mission on this one, get out of here. And look, that happens even sometimes when we're not that feeling as, maybe not as meditating as much, or connecting. So not to feel bad about these things. It's a part of the process, you know, of life, really. You know, spiritual path or not. You know, I mean, we're all on it technically, but whether we really embrace it or not, it's another thing. So anyway, I'm going to leave this here, and I will do more videos based on this, because I really want to help you to find this peace, this fulfillment, this sense of joy from within, instead of looking outwardly, because you stress yourself out all the time, and we compare ourselves to others' lives. Forget about all that nonsense. Forget about it. You know, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It matters what's going on with you. You know, and feel good inside yourself to know, you know what, despite what everything's going on, whether I've got things or don't have things, I'm proud of who I am and the way I conduct myself in this world. Okay, I'm not talking about being all egotistical about it, but just have a sense of, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best, and I'm just going to keep focusing on that higher aspect within inside me, and let it lead me. You know, look, Jesus again. You remember this, maybe some of you. He said, "Your Father knows. Your Father in heaven, pineal gland." And that's not the third eye. It's actually more in the center of the head. Look up the anatomy of that. He said, your Father knows what you have need of before you even ask. So you don't even really need to ask, really. I mean, you can. That you can have a very broad statement. Instead of saying, I want this house, this is nonsense. It's so basic, primitive sandbox spirituality, it's ridiculous, okay? Let God guide your life, because, and we'll talk about this, I'll touch on this at the moment here, in the aspect of what Dharma is, to what the true fulfillment of how our life should be, in a sense. There's different ways to word this depending on which culture you're looking at. But essentially, if we're in alignment with our true life, our true path, we will find a sense of peace and fulfillment no matter what's going on. And that is our Dharma. That is how we should be living. So a way to know whether you're living that or not: do you feel balanced? Do you feel content? Do you feel these things? Are you happy whether things are working out the way you'd like them to or not? Nothing wrong with having things, oh, I'd like a little bit more of this and that. But keep seeking God. God knows. Trust God. And you don't really have to put a lot of emphasis. You can just say, look, God, you know what I have need of. Before I even ask, I turn over my life to you. I surrender it to you, to your will to be done here on earth. That's what the Lord's Prayer, well, at least the Christian version, is really saying, is to try to get that higher aspect of mind, not the ego, what the ego's telling us, because the ego's an idiot. The ego's an idiot. And most of the things you say you want don't even come from your general idea anyway. You've been influenced all through your life. Get this thing, from a young age, whatever. They're not even genuine things, because that's why a lot of time when people get them, they're not that happy. Oh, I thought I was going to enjoy this. No. Well, it wasn't really the original thought, was it? You weren't in attunement with who you are. And you're not going to get that from the outside world. You need to spend time allowing this higher aspect of mind to leak into your conscious mind to guide and direct you. You know? And this is, again, we're going to Taoism for a moment. Lao Tzu, even said, surrender yourself to the Tao, and the Tao will never leave you. You can call that God, you can call it whatever. The names don't matter. We're talking the same thing, the same mechanics of how this works. So I'm going to leave this here with you today for something to think about. And I really, really wish you all such joy and peace in your lives. And this is why I'm sharing this with you, that you may find this too within inside yourself, even in these very heavy, hard times right now with a lot of chaos. So I send you so much love and joy, and I just wish you all the very, very best.